One or two. The mansion loomed before him like a ghost from another life. Alexander Morozov stood at the iron gates, the chill of the evening air biting through his tailored coat. 10 years had passed since he last walked up this driveway, yet every stone, every rusted hinge whispered fragments of a memory he couldn't quite grasp. The air smelled of pine and rain, exactly as it had the night he left everything behind. The chauffeur opened the car door, but Alexander hesitated before stepping out. His heart pounded with unease. He had imagined this moment countless times, the triumphant return of a man who conquered the world. Yet now he felt like a stranger approaching someone else's home. When he finally stepped inside, the silence was deafening. His footsteps echoed against the marble floor, his reflection flickering in the crystal mirrors like a ghost's. The portraits on the walls stared down at him, his ancestors, proud and cold, as if judging him for the years of absence. He paused before one of them, a painting of a little girl in a white dress with golden curls. The nameplate below read Sofia Morozova. He swallowed hard, feeling something twist inside his chest, but before he could look away, a soft voice broke the silence. "Papa." He turned sharply. A young girl stood at the foot of the stairs, clutching a small stuffed bear to her chest. She looked at him with wide, trembling eyes full of hope. Her face seemed familiar, painfully so, but his mind drew a blank. Who are you?" he demanded, his tone low, cautious. The girl's lips quivered. "It's me, Papa, Sophia." The name struck him like lightning. He felt his throat tighten, but his reason fought against the impossible. His daughter had died years ago. He remembered the illness, the doctors shaking their heads, the funeral he could not bear to attend. "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "You're lying. My daughter is gone. Don't mock me." Her tears came instantly, silently rolling down her cheeks. She took a small, hesitant step toward him. "Papa, please. I waited for you. All these years, enough," he shouted, his voice cracking with anger he didn't understand. The sound of his rage echoed through the hall like thunder. "Who put you up to this?" His eyes darted toward the staircase as Maria, the maid, appeared, her hands trembling as she wiped them on her apron. "Sir, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. She's telling the truth, but Alexander's anger only deepened. "I trusted you, Maria. You were supposed to protect this house, not fill it with strangers." The girl sobbed harder, the stuffed bear slipping from her arms and falling to the floor. The sight made something inside him falter, something old and fragile. For a split second, he felt a pang of recognition, a shadow of love, a whisper of memory. But it vanished as quickly as it came, swallowed by years of guilt and denial. Without another word, he turned his back on her and walked toward his study, the echo of her cries following him down the long corridor like a ghost he could no longer remember. The wind howled outside as the night deepened, rattling the windows of the Morozov estate like 1,000 unseen hands begging to be let in. Alexander sat alone in his dimly lit study, the flickering glow of the fireplace dancing across the walls lined with books and dust-covered memories. The scent of old paper and smoke filled the air, mingling with the faint perfume of time gone by. He poured himself a glass of brandy, his trembling hand barely steady enough to raise it to his lips. The warmth of the liquor did nothing to ease the chill crawling up his spine. He stared at the framed photograph on his desk. A picture of a little girl no older than 6, smiling wide with 2 missing teeth and a crown of golden curls. Her laughter seemed to echo faintly in the back of his mind, but the sound faded when he tried to grasp it. He pressed his fingers to his temple, breathing heavily, fragments of memories flashing. A child's laughter in the garden, the soft tug of tiny fingers on his sleeve, the scent of jasmine in her hair. Then, just as quickly, those moments scattered into nothing. "Why can't I remember her?" he whispered to the silence. "Why does her face feel like a dream I once had?" A soft knock broke through the stillness. "Sir," came Maria's timid voice from the other side. She stepped inside slowly, her apron still damp from cleaning, her face pale and tear-streaked. For a long moment she stood there, afraid to meet his eyes. "Mr. Morozov," she began softly, "you must believe me. That girl is your daughter." Alexander's gaze was cold, but his voice trembled. My daughter died, Maria. I buried her in my heart years ago." "No," Maria said firmly, her voice rising with desperation. "You left when she was sick, yes, but she lived. The doctors found a new treatment and she recovered. She waited for you every year, every birthday, hoping you'd come back. I raised her as best I could, as you asked me to." Her words struck him like a blade. His hand tightened around the brandy glass until it cracked, amber liquid dripping down his fingers. "That's impossible," he whispered, his eyes filling with something between fury and grief. "If she lived, why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't you write?" Maria took a trembling breath. "I did, sir, many times. But your letters were returned unopened. You moved, changed numbers, and after a while, I thought you didn't want to remember." His world began to tilt. He sank into his chair, running a shaking hand over his face. The truth clawed at the edges of his mind, begging to be seen. Maria stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "You forgot her not because she was gone, but because you couldn't bear the pain of almost losing her. You locked her away inside yourself?" Alexander's breath hitched. The clock on the wall ticked louder, each second cutting into him like a knife. He looked again at the photograph, at that innocent smile, and for a fleeting instant the face of the girl downstairs overlapped perfectly with the memory before him. The same eyes, the same warmth. His heart stuttered. "My God," he muttered, pushing himself to his feet. The room spun around him, and guilt, raw and suffocating, rushed through every vein. He stumbled toward the door, his voice breaking. "Where is she now?" Maria swallowed hard, her lips quivering. "In her room, sir. She hasn't stopped crying." He paused, his hand trembling on the doorknob, the weight of 10 lost years pressing down on his shoulders. The rain beat harder against the windows as if urging him forward. For the first time in years, Alexander Morozov was afraid, not of failure, not of loss, but of facing the very love he had buried and forgotten. The storm had softened to a weary drizzle by the time Alexander reached the top of the staircase. The house was silent now, but not the kind of silence he'd known before. It was a heavy, breathing silence, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something. He walked slowly down the long corridor, each step echoing against the marble. The portraits lining the walls seemed to follow him, their painted eyes filled with judgment, their smiles frozen in time. His pulse thudded in his ears. At the end of the hallway, a door stood slightly ajar. Through the narrow crack, a faint light spilled into the corridor. He could hear quiet sobs coming from inside, the sound of a heart breaking softly, over and over. He stopped outside the door, his hand hovering over the knob, his chest tight with fear and guilt. For a moment he almost turned away. What right did he have to face her now, after so many years of absence and denial? But then he saw something lying on the floor near the threshold. The small stuffed bear the girl had dropped earlier. Its button eye was missing, its fur worn from years of being held too tightly. He picked it up with trembling hands, the touch of the fabric stirring a flood of memories he could no longer hold back. The first time he had given it to her, she had been 5, clapping her hands in delight, hugging the bear as if it were her dearest friend. The laughter, the light in her eyes, it all came rushing back in a wave so powerful he could hardly breathe. Tears welled in his eyes. He pushed the door open gently. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders trembled with each silent sob. When she heard the door creak, she didn't look up. She whispered through her tears, "Please go, Maria. I just want to be alone." But it wasn't Maria's voice that answered. Sophia. Her head shot up. Her tear-filled eyes widened as she saw him standing there, the stuffed bear in his hand. For a long moment neither of them moved. The only sound was the slow ticking of the small clock on her nightstand. Then, in a broken whisper, he said, "I remember now." Her breath caught in her throat. He took a few steps forward, his eyes glistening. "You had this bear when you were little. You refused to sleep without it. I used to tell you it would protect you while I was away." His voice cracked and he pressed the toy to his chest. "But I was the one who didn't protect you. I left. I forgot the most precious thing in my life." Sophia's lips trembled as tears streamed down her face. "You didn't forget, Papa. You were just lost." She stood, hesitant at first, then crossed the room until she was close enough to touch him. Her hand rose slowly, uncertainly to his cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, his body shaking with quiet sobs. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Forgive me for not recognizing you. For not being there." She didn't answer. Instead, she threw her arms around him, clutching him as if afraid he might vanish again. He held her tight, the years of emptiness between them dissolving in that one embrace. Tears fell freely down his face, soaking into her hair. "I missed you every day." 2-2, she murmured against his chest. "I thought you'd never come back." "I almost didn't," he admitted, his voice trembling, "because I couldn't face what I'd lost. But you brought me back." Outside, the storm had finally passed. A faint light broke through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the room. Maria stood quietly at the doorway, her hands clasped, tears streaming down her face, not of sorrow this time, but of relief. And in that fragile stillness, father and daughter held on to each other as if trying to make up for every lost year. For the first time in a decade, the Morozov mansion felt alive again, not with wealth or grandeur, but with something far rarer, love rediscovered.